and good afternoon. Welcome to episode 2 of the space between your ears, afternoon, morning, evening, whenever you're listening to this. We're doing the live stream right now on YouTube, but of course, this audio is going to go to anywhere you can hear your podcast, whether it be Radio Public, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, you name it, it's on there. Don't forget, you can visit our sponsor for today's episode, the Healing Meals Inc., located on Everett Road in Albany. My buddy Chris doing things big up there. And then, of course, hey, if you want to follow the show, yeah, get a little fancy this week. Yeah, it's a slow build. It's a slow build, folks. You can follow me on Twitter at Brian Katie, as you see going across the screen. Or if you got any questions, comments, if you want to share any of your stories involving any of the topics that we cover on the show or just your general mental health story, you can always send that to me. Email it to me, brian.katie at godzillamedia.com. As I teased, if you saw the teases on my Twitter or on my Facebook, I've been teasing that this is an interesting episode today, we'll say. So, yeah. Today is about covering what ifs in life. It's something that, we as human beings, we are prone to having doubts about certain decisions we made in life, doubts about even just simple things like, when you're younger, it's probably like, if I just answered this question differently, I would have had a passing grade. Or if I just wrote my paper a little differently, I would have had a B instead of a C plus, or just stupid little stuff like that as a kid. And now as you grow older, those doubtful or questionable decisions involve more complex and bigger issues about life. And so today, we're not going to go back to grade school. No, we're not going to talk about if I just known 4 times 4 correctly, I would have gotten an A plus. No, we're not going to talk about that kind of stuff. We're going to talk bigger life issues, stuff that goes back for me. The rough time span we're looking at is about a 10-year span, ranging from when I was about 18, 19. Actually, much further than that. It goes back to even when I was a child for one part of it. But we're going to start with, we're actually going to go kind of most recent to furthest back, just because that's how I wrote it down. So we're going to go by the seat of our pants and just kind of do things a little backwards today. So we're going to start with a story involving the last full-time radio job I had. Now, for those of you who are new to the program, may not know my entire background, I was part of the radio business, both at volunteer college campus stations as well as commercial radio stations from late 2005 up through 2016 on a consistent basis, with a couple random short-term gigs picked up in the spring of 2017 as well as the summer of 2018. That didn't really amount to anything, and just aren't worth discussing. Now, the entirety of that 11-year span, 05 to 2016, can be split up a few different ways. And I decided for today's show in particular of what ifs, the portion of my radio career that would best fit that context would be the final couple of years of that time period from 2000, late 2013 up through when I left around Memorial Day of 2016. So kind of coincidental, since Memorial Day is a week and a half from now, as we are taping this on May 20th. So to set up the scenario, in 2013, I was let go by Town Square Media around Labor Day weekend, and the first people that called me for an interview afterwards were the people at Albany Broadcasting, specifically Krista, who was the news director at the time at Albany Broadcasting, and she also ran the traffic department, and originally brought me in as a traffic reporter for mornings, so she could shift one of the people that were filling the morning roles in traffic, shift them into doing news full-time in mornings. And then that role eventually evolved. We're not going to get into that story. That's a whole hullabaloo. But in the first month of me at Albany Broadcasting, I also got another call from a little ragtag small company called Empire Broadcasting. Now, if you've been around the Albany area enough, the capital region, you might have also known them prior to that as Anastas Media, which included, at the time, they had originally been called Moon Radio, Star Radio. I'm not exactly sure. They had a third frequency, I believe. I'm not sure what that was called specifically, but I do know originally they had Moon Radio, which was 900 AM, WABY, and Star, which was 101.3. Since then, a new group had come in, bought out Anastas for those frequencies, and also at one point they were broadcasting YNN over the radio back when they still had a radio frequency, which is now Spectrum News. So the company had come in, bought out Anastas in this area, eventually got rid of YNN and their feed, and YNN just stopped doing radio feed altogether. And they rebranded 101.3 as the Jockey. They also had a station on 1240 AM. I gotta be honest, don't quote me. I don't remember exactly what it was called originally at this time. And then they were also fooling around with the idea of potentially picking up another frequency. But that's kind of irrelevant to the story. But anyways, so the reason I got this call is because the main person in charge of day-to-day operations in that building was the gentleman who originally had brought me in when I started in radio in late 05 into 06 at Siena College with WVCR 88.3 The Sing, and that was Nirav Patel. He wound up leaving less than a year after I started. He took on a different job with, not exactly, I want to say the Weather Channel, maybe it was, doing a lot of consulting for them. And then eventually found himself back in the radio by this time. So he called me, said, "Hey, can we at least talk?" So I go down, well, up in this case, because Malta is north of Latham in Albany. So I go up to Malta, sit down. It also turns out that their sales manager is one of the sales managers that used to work at Town Square with me, Jim Millis. And so we talk, and it wasn't even really an interview. It was more or less just a half hour of bullshit and catching up, honestly. And then eventually conversation came around, and he was like, "So do you want to come on board with us?" And I said, "Well, I'm at Albany. I'm working I'm working weekday mornings." He's like, "Perfect, because I have a way for you to come on board for nights and weekends." So the way I got in the door there at Empire was as a board op on nights, on Friday nights. I should rephrase this. So basically, I was brought on as a board op for Union Hockey broadcasts, which were typically Friday nights, Saturday nights, and then Sundays. Typically, they were Sunday afternoon puck drops. At the time, they also broadcast Union football, which was pretty much always Saturday afternoon games around like noon or 1. And then at the time, they also were carrying NASCAR still on the frequency. And those races obviously were Sunday afternoons. So basically, I went from having one radio job to 0 to 1 to now 2. And I went from unemployed to working 4 hours a week, 5 days a week, to now roughly 35 hours a week, over 7 days a week, give or take. Which I was fine with, because at the time I still had that mentality of I wanted to grind, I wanted to grow. Radio is what I wanted to do. That was my career mindset. So I kept pushing. So fast forward, and they wound up turning the 1240 frequency into a sports station. And actually, that's what it was. My apologies. It was a sports station when I already came on board. It was a CBS Sports affiliate. And then they started talking the end of that winter, actually. So this was 2014. They started talking around February, March of 2014 about A, switching from CBS Sports to NBC Sports, and B, having me change the Sunday morning 1 hour show I was doing to a 5 days a week, Monday through Friday afternoon show, Katie's Corner. And of course, I'm not going to say no to that. So I ended up leaving Albany Broadcasting that spring, I guess, so I can take on a full-time position in the building at Empire, behind the scenes as well as on the air. So time goes on, and here's where the what if comes into play. It doesn't involve only broadcasting, because what had happened there was Krista had left for, I can't remember what the job was she took on then, but she left, which vacated her news and traffic director position. And from that position, they were holding interviews in-house, as well as taking applications for the position. And they did interview a couple people outside the building. But they end up, in the end, having a meeting of the entire current news and traffic department saying, we're absorbing the position and not going to promote or hire anyone from the outside for that position. It's just not going to exist anymore. So that was the writing on the wall of, well, I was the most qualified guy in the building for it, and they just chose to absorb the position instead of giving it to somebody. So screw this. And that was literally within a 2 to 3 week period of me leaving and taking on a full-time position at Empire. So all my broadcasting has nothing to do with this. I don't have any what ifs at all whatsoever with that building. The what if came slowly over time, because as time wore on and the weeks turned into months and the months turned into eventually 2 years, I slowly grew to recognize that in that building of, give or take, including weekend people, Empire Broadcasting had maybe a payroll of 15 to 20 people-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. And out of those people, there's only 3 people that had any support for the sports station, my show, and wanting to see it grow. Me, Nirav, and one of the salespeople who I'm still very good friends with to this day, Mike. And it made me wonder. I couldn't help myself. It just made me think. And I felt abandoned. I felt, in a way, betrayed. But it wasn't Nirav's fault. He's the operations manager, but he's still answering to what the board of, I don't know if you want to call it the board of trustees that they had, or the board of whatever board they had assembled of all the owners, because it was a conglomerate of owners. It was like 6 or 7 different owners who had their money in the put into this project and into this company. They all were so focused on pushing one station in particular and just putting everything behind it, all the sales resources, all the promotional resources, that the 3 other stations, not even just mine, Moon Radio was the same way, and the new frequency event, they eventually picked up 106.1. We were all considered, how should I put this, the black sheep of the building. Like, they basically treated 101.3 The Jockey as an only child. And the other 3 stations were all orphans that got adopted just for the sake of being adopted. That's essentially the way it felt like we were being treated. But the only person who was really affecting, or that seemed to vocalize that they cared about it, was me. Because, no offense, the people that were talent on Moon were doing it more as a hobby than as a job. I mean, because they were all of older age who had retired or were about to retire from their careers outside of that building, and were really just doing Moon Radio as a hobby more than anything else. So it wasn't really affecting them, honestly. 106.1 was all voice tracked by the people already in the building, so that didn't even matter. So, long story short, I'm really the only person vocalizing this effect and not being heard. Asking about doing different stuff, doing live remotes at football games, live remotes from, which we did one time for a Union RPI hockey game at the TU. We did a remote broadcast one time, and it wasn't even under my own station's banner. It was under Mix 106.1. It was just for lack of a better phrase, and pardon my French here, it was a clusterfuck. And it was supremely frustrating. And that, combined with seeing, because the position I was in behind the scenes in the station, seeing numbers declining, and I'm not talking ratings numbers, I'm talking money declining, income. I saw the writing on the wall that I'm basically on a slowly sinking ship. I'm on the Titanic, but I happen to be one of the first to notice and are able to get on a boat to get the hell off it. So I started looking around for other jobs, ended up working for Time Warner for a few months, and I left around Memorial Day weekend of 2016. So, long story short, that was just another example in life of me feeling abandoned. And I'll be quite honest, looking back and then seeing the employment history I racked up the next few years after that, that job, that time period in that building with those people at those radio stations was a clear mindfuck for me. It was. My confidence about doing anything other than the PA announcing that I've kept doing since then, my confidence was shot. And the worst thing you can have when it comes to any kind of medium in media is having your confidence shot. Because typically the mindset you want to have is you're never satisfied. Well, not typically, but the people who really get shit done are the people who are never satisfied and go by the phrase of "you're only as good as your next show." And that's what makes some of the great athletes out there too. They have that same mentality. Like, just look at a LeBron James. I think that's probably the best example I could give of an athlete who has that mentality. Yeah, he's got he's got 4 NBA titles. He's got 4 MVPs, I believe, 4 league MVPs, but he's still going. And he's been in the league for about 20 years, and he keeps going. He keeps trying to improve his physical health, his physical well-being. He does way different game prep now than he did when he was a rookie almost 20 years ago. And why is that? Because you're only as good as your next game. You can't rest on your laurels. And that's essentially where I was at. I was resting on my laurels and just not giving a damn anymore. And that's something that took a while to shake off. I would say in that regard, I pretty much have shut that off, that part of me, the radio side of me. Obviously, as the phrase goes, never say never, especially when it comes to anything entertainment or media-based. But I would say I've pretty much closed the door on radio, at least 95% of the way. And I don't feel bad about it. Like, honestly, the only way I can see myself ever going back to radio at this point, because I have this outlet that I'm starting now with this podcast and my other Saturday, my other weekend podcast for pro wrestling, and the fact that I can start another podcast if I want to, because my boss is cool and he's all for me doing more stuff. Having that freedom and that encouragement to be creative, I don't really need it anymore at this point because I found Godzilla Media. And so that's why it's 95% closed. Here's the only way. I'll actually go out on a limb and say this right now. Not on a limb. I'm going to say this right now. Let this be put in stone right now. And I know I have at least a couple family members listening and watching, so hold me to it. The only way I get back into radio whatsoever from this point forward, as long as nothing goes crazy with this stuff, the only way I get back into radio is if like a dream play-by-play position opens for a sports team. That's it. Like, for example, if I got a call one day that Siena College wanted a play-by-play guy for their radio broadcast for men's basketball, that'd be hard to turn down. But that's like on the very short list. Very, very short list. Because now I found the confidence and the joy out of not just having started these podcasts, but also I allowed PA announcement to become a more personal part of my life. I found helping do scouting trips for my friend who's a D3 college basketball coach. I find doing that as part of my joy because I love basketball that much. And I love looking at recruits and seeing what works, what doesn't work, what they can work on, what they could really grow with. So the abandonment, I'd say, is gone, especially now that I'm married. So that kind of helps. But there was a lot of being left out on an island in that building, and that's that. So I did not expect that to go that long, but it was what it was. I tend to go really long on my stories, I guess. Before we get into the next one real quick, I just want to remind you that today's episode is sponsored by the Healing Meals Inc. And my boy Chris, he a fellow graduate of CPA with me, but he also graduated from Siena. He was a techie. He loved computer science and biology, and that's what he studied at Siena. Was a website programmer and all kinds of stuff. And but he felt like there was something more for him to be doing in life, that there was a bigger calling for himself. So he took his cooking skills, and in 2016, he launched the Healing Meals Inc., looking to provide people with quick, healthy alternatives to fast food when life gets too hectic to bother cooking a meal at home. Again, not a diet. It's not a weight loss plan. This isn't an Atkins diet. This isn't Weight Watchers. This is simply the ability to eat healthy food conveniently and affordably. Basically, what you do is you visit thehealingmeals.com to see their menu for the upcoming week. You order everything in advance based on what you want and the size of your family or your household. The deadline for all orders is Sunday. Order as little or as much as you like, and then you can schedule a pickup for that Monday or Tuesday during their hours. Plus, the Healing Meals has also reopened their storefront for special Sunday hours, 11 to 6, with frozen meals available for purchase at buy one, get one half off. And Chris is also providing fresh made-to-order items on Sundays, like breakfast sandwiches, pizzas, salads, and smoothies. So if you want more information on the Healing Meals Inc., located on Everett Road in Albany, visit thehealingmeals.com. And when you see Chris at the shop, tell him Brian Katie sent you and say hello for me. So, that said, let's move on to the next part. I smile and kind of giggle on the inside because a couple of people watching this are gonna, on the live stream right now, are gonna get a kick out of it. Woo, I don't know where to begin. I don't know where to begin with this one. Now, knowing the topic of today being what ifs, a couple of people in the chat are probably seeing this header or liner towards the bottom. Banner. That's the word I want. They'll see the banner and be like, oh God, please tell me he doesn't still have feelings for her. No. It's not at all the what if. So this is the only time in my life, I don't think I've ever openly admitted this to anyone, so this is a first. This is the only time in my life where I was, for lack of a better phrase, a player. So here's the sitch. Early portion of 06, I was finishing up my only year that I was an official student at Siena College. And I was fooling around with, kind of dating a girl that was 2 years ahead of me at Siena. And we were part of the theater group on campus as well, so we saw each other pretty frequently. And then at the same time, towards the end of that spring semester, I auditioned for and got into my first ever not school-related musical. So I was community theater for the first time ever, called... Actually, no, correction. It was my second one. My first one was the summer after I graduated from CBA, The Secret Garden. The second one, oh boy. I want to say this one was Tom Sawyer. I could be wrong, and I'm sure if any of my old friends from my musical days sees this, they'll correct me. But anyways, so we were doing the I auditioned for the show. I eventually meet, I get reacquainted with a few friends I made from the previous summer and meet new people that weren't in the show from last year. And one of the new people I meet is a girl, and we just hit it off. Nothing crazy. But our friendship grew little by little over the course of the next few months to the point where, as we get closer and closer to the actual show days, the 2 weeks of shows we were going to do at, I believe this was our first year in Tawasenta Park, if I remember correctly. Yeah, because the year before we were at Sand Creek Middle School. So this was Tawasenta in Guilderland, Altamont, Guilderland, whatever the hell you want to call it. So we both were kind of recognizing that there might be something there, but we weren't really vocalizing it per se. So here I am, not quite sure what I want to do, but the girl I met at Siena is over in Connecticut for her summer at home. Meanwhile, I'm over here kind of, you know. But again, nothing physical had happened. It was just a lot of talking and whatever. To the point where eventually, I broke things off with Siena Girl. And within 24 hours, boom, I'm right into a new relationship. So, to overview the next 4+ years of my life, this girl, and you'll understand why I say girl and not woman when I explain the maturity level of this woman. Well, girl, whatever. She would bend over backwards. And I can say this clear as day now, looking back at every little thing she did. She would head over heels with the idea of, for lack of a better phrase, both of us abandoning our families. Except for her brother and her mother. Her father, while they lived in the same household, her and her father had a hot again, cold again kind of relationship in that household. So he was kind of good one day, bad, you get the point. But just little things, like she would talk shit about family members to me. She would just purposely try to get me to do stuff with her and not do stuff with my family that I usually would have done. She basically wanted no timeshare whatsoever. That's the best way for me to put it. Because, and this is what I've learned now that I'm married, everything is about compromise, right? Compromise. We'll do this with your family, but then do this with my family kind of thing. We'll watch this show tonight, but tomorrow night we'll watch this show because I want to watch it. Compromise. The basic fact of life about relationships. This witch, you can think about what I want to say. She wanted no part of timeshare or compromise or anything like that. It was all her. And it was a slow build of anger for me. Because at first I wasn't even recognizing it. I was turning a blind eye to it. I was giving excuses left and right. With the most vocal leader of the pack against her being my mother. And looking back at life, this is probably, to be very frank, the most correct she's ever been about anything in my life. And you can pat yourself on the back if you're listening to this, Mom. because you deserve it. This was the most correct thing this is the thing you've been the most correct about ever in life involving me was screw. I'll just say it. This bitch trying to divide me away from my family. And I eventually recognized it. And I was caught between a rock and a hard place because I really did like this girl. Like I mentioned, we were together 4 years, and at a point, I felt like there's potential there for lifetime commitment. But then the final straw that broke the camel's back came through when I came to find out through a couple of mutual friends who had my back that she cheated on me. And then obviously I broke up with her after that. So where's the what if in this whole story? Because it sounds like she was a real bitch. You shouldn't have ever stayed with her this long, blah, blah, blah. First off, before I get to the what if, all this wasn't immediately recognizable. It was like I mentioned, a slow build. Like when it started coming across on holidays and everything is really when shit hit the fan. But the what if here, and this is not me having regrets about how things turned out because I have zero regrets. The what if I have regarding this situation, because I was feeling I was feeling pretty torn about the situation, didn't know what direction to go in. Because I was feeling pressure from both sides, and I didn't have a firm grasp on what I wanted to do. So the what if becomes, what if she never cheated on me? That's the what if from the whole situation. Because if she doesn't do that, I don't have, as I'll put it, the perfect out from the relationship. Like, it basically, her doing that avoided what would have been a very difficult conversation down the road, and it probably wouldn't have happened as fast as it did because of that event. I can still vividly remember breaking up with her and her later that day asking me to come see her uh, at our job, because we also worked together too, which I think was, looking back now, that was mistake number one. And that was mistake number one right out of the gate because it happened within a month of us getting together. We always had the same shifts, but we worked in the same building for pretty much the entirety of our relationship. Which, man, I was a dumbass when I was in my 20s. Oh, man, was I dumb in my 20s? Oh, my God. Wow. Yeah. Like if I could go back and rewind, I would completely redo those 4 years and just never not be in any relationship during that time. But here's the thing. Here's the biggest what if about her never cheating on me, if she never cheated on me, because getting out of that relationship led me to be single for 6.5 years for a combination of reasons, but mostly because, much like the radio story from earlier, my confidence completely shot. I didn't want a damn thing to do with women. I was very content with being single 95% of the time during those 6.5 years. I was content as hell with being single, wanted nothing to do with women, was focusing on my radio career that I had at the time, was focusing on PA announcing, looking to grow my brand in that regard. And then I met my now wife. So, like, does life still work out the same way if we break up for a different reasoning? Or if we don't break up at all? Like where what directions are taken from me from that point forward? So those are the main what ifs for that. So now we get to what I think is going to be the funnier, but for the first time, raw and honest viewpoint about this topic. When I was a young boy. No, I'm not going to sing that song. But growing up, I was in a very yeah. I grew up in a Catholic household that like I went to Catholic schools from kindergarten up through the end of Siena is Franciscan, so I guess you could count that too. Basically, all my education was essentially of like Catholic faith of some sort. Went to two different grade schools. They were both Catholic schools. Went to a Catholic high school at CBA, and then obviously the 1 year at Siena. So I was surrounded by the religion my whole life, from masses for school, and then just going to weekly mass on Saturdays or Sundays with my family. And eventually to a point where in fourth grade I started altar serving, and started altar serving pretty regularly on weekends. Initially Sunday mornings, from what I recall, it was 9 a.m. mass. This is going back a long time because the mass schedule changed like 20 years ago, so bear with me. I want to say Sunday mornings were 7:30, 9, 11, and then 7:30 at night, with the 4 p.m. vigil on Saturdays. So we were 9 a.m. people. Listen, Catholics are weird. They have a specific mass they like to go to. Some people love 7:30 in the morning. The 40 people that loved it, they were there with devotion. Then you have the people that love going to 9 a.m. mass so they could head to brunch right away. The people at the 11 a.m. mass who could go to late brunch right away after that. And then 7:30 p.m. are the people who either just totally forgot and needed to go or just didn't want to be seen. I don't know. It was called the Last Chance Mass because it was the latest mass in the entire diocese of Albany. 7:30 night, St. James, Delaware Ave. So we were 9 a.m. people, eventually transitioned to being Saturday vigil at 4 p.m. people. Which are honestly the masses I remember the most. I just know that Sunday morning was like originally what we did at first, and then we transitioned to Saturday at some point. I don't know when, but we did. Anyways, so I altar served basically from the age of 9 up to guesstimate mid-20s ish. That's the guess I'm going to put on it. Obviously, a lot less once I got out of high school, but I'll still serve on occasion, especially during Christmas week and Holy Week in the spring, especially Holy Week. Like there was a point in time, and you can ask certain people who still go to that church from back in the day, they will tell you that we had, and I'm not afraid to say this, it's going to sound stupid for those of you who aren't Catholic, but we had an all-star cast of altar servers at one point in that. It was, and I had it as at five of us, plus an adult who Was basically the one training all the altar servers, and then was also doing all the funerals. And I think he still does actually at this point. Mr. Gizzy, Vince, um, who I can't. If I start explaining my relationship with him, I'm gonna cry. So I'm not gonna. Um, so it was him plus myself, my sister, and then 3 siblings, the Kiefers, Dan, Abby, Alex. We were the crew. We were the go-to crew for God. Dan was a bit older than Abby and Alex, so I think he was only around for a couple of years with Abby and Alex. But even after that, we still had what I'll call the core 4 of me, Christine, Alex, and Abby for a while. We were just the ones, and they were, because by then they merged the 9 and 11 masses to a 10/10:30, depending on time of year. So they were Sunday morning. They were a Sunday morning family. We were a Saturday family, and we'd see each other at certain events for the church, for the parish from time to time. But other than that, our paths didn't really cross a whole lot until that time of year. But anyways, so that's all going on. So I'm still altar serving as I go into high school at CBA. And you can ask my mother this, because she was the one who had the most first person experience about this. My first 3 to 4 months of high school freshman year was rough. And I mean rough with 5 F's. Rough. Because it was on me, basically, if CBA didn't work. It was on me, because I had 3 choices, essentially. I had 3 choices in 8th grade. 1, McGinn, because I took their scholarship exam. 2, CBA, because I took their scholarship exam. 3, Albany High. Those were the 3 options. No ifs, ands, or buts. Those were the 3 choices I had. And quite frankly, I immediately eliminated Bishop McGinn, because a lot of the people from my graduating class in grade school were going to go there. And I honestly wanted to change. I didn't want to be around that crew anymore. I didn't want to be around that group of like 20 kids. So the options then were CBA, Albany High. That's it. And, you know, I went to an open house for CBA and thought about it, and I just had a feeling Albany High was not going to be me. It was not going to be me. And I knew it pretty much from the rip. So once I got the scholarship at CBA, that was the green light. And it was basically put on me. I don't know if I ever had a real conversation with my mother about this or not, but it was basically, if it's too much after a year, you'll transfer. You can transfer. That was essentially, and that was something my guidance counselor said too, because I went to him a few times during that first semester of my freshman year, and he was like, give it the rest of the year, see if what happens. Worst case, you can always transfer and go to Albany High or Bishop McGinn. I'll give him credit, Dave Domel, and he's still there, still the varsity basketball coach at CBA. He said, give it time. And if by the end of the year you feel the same exact way, then we can't say you tried. We can't say you didn't try, I should say. Excuse me. Sorry. So, eventually, 3 things kept me at CBA. Number 1, joining the color guard during my second semester of that year. Number 2, joining the speech and debate team. And 3, learning about the campus ministry program at CBA and becoming involved with that. And so, in the midst of that winter of my freshman year, I was picked by the youth ministry leader at my church to go to a national youth conference. So that snowballed into me also serving every school mass, me helping run the campus ministry program the last 3 years I was at CBA. Me being part of the youth ministry team in my church, me being part of the diocesan retreat team, which gave retreats to kids receiving their confirmation. So think of this. I'm a freshman in high school. I'm trying to tell kids 2 to 3 years older than me at the time how to live their lives correctly and the Catholic way before they get their confirmation. Looking back now, think back now, God, that was weird. But at the time, I didn't give a shit because, and this is what it's leading up to, as time went on, and I started doing more and more of that stuff, and eventually met Father Jim Walsh, who is currently still at St. Pius and doing a tremendous job there in Loudonville. Father Jim was the, what was the phrase? He was the, he was basically the, lack of a better phrase, the recruiter for the diocese. And I can't think of the damn phrase for it. But basically, he was running a group that met roughly once a month, once every couple of months. Discernment group. That's the phrase. He was running the discernment group for the diocese, which was a group of guys, all different ages, high school for me. I was the only high schooler, by the way. Hi. Guys in their 20s, 30s, 40s, all considering potentially going into the seminary, whenever that might be. And we just talk about all kinds of different stuff, do all kinds of different stuff. One time went to Giants camp. A couple times we visited seminaries. We would do shadow days where we'd follow around a priest for the day in the diocese and just see all the different stuff they did. Had dinner with Bishop Hubbard a couple of times back when he was still the bishop. I mean, I was deep in it, right? I was really, really deep. To the point where I had my grandmother convinced for years, because honestly, I'm going to put this out there in the universe. If there was any person on this planet at the time who wanted that to happen more than anyone else, it was my grandmother. There's no question about it. My mother, she was chill. She's like, whatever makes you happy, Brian. And that's still what's, to this day, that's like her most common phrase. Even when I'm almost 34 years old, I got your back 100%. Just whatever makes you happy, Brian. That's because that's what mothers do. That's what they say. My grandmother, though, hot damn. That was like if I had to get inside her brain, I had to think, living to see her grandkids and me becoming a priest were like 1A, 1B with each other at one point. That's how crazy. Not crazy. But this is how serious this woman was, thinking I was going to be a priest. And I have to be honest, like looking back now, yes, I was very open to it, the idea. But I don't think I can look back and honestly say there was ever a point where I felt good about it. I did feel there was a little pressure, unintentional, of course, because my grandmother would never intentionally try to pressure me in anything. But I did feel there was a little pressure. Plus, got to a point where I was doing so much stuff in and out of school. I had classmates and underclassmen call me Father Katie. All right? Like, my last 2 years of high school, I think I was called Father Katie more than I was called Brian. All right? So, like, I think I'll even go on a limb and say this. I think more teachers teachers called me Brian my final 2 years of high school than students did. Like, that's how in deep I was. So I think it was just the little bit of pressure I was feeling, honestly, there. Plus, I don't know. There was something not meshing well with me up here. And to this day, I don't know what it was or is. All I know is that I haven't been to a mass in years, like a legit mass. I've been to a baptism, but I haven't been to an actual mass in years. And yeah, to this day, I honestly can't sit here and tell you, aside from feeling pressured unintentionally by my grandmother, I honestly can't think of what else was up here. There was just a mental block, I guess would be the best way to put it. Like, and I'm sure people who go through depression like I go through, they'll get what I'm about to say. There are times, especially now that my depression has come more to the forefront in my life, there are certain days where if I accidentally forget to take my medication for a day or two, I feel like I can't think. Either I feel one of two ways. Either I can't think at all, and my thoughts completely escape me, and it's like I have no brain, or my brain goes into overdrive and is thinking a million things per second, and I can't get it to stop racing, and therefore can't sleep that night. It's one or the other. I'm either in the clouds or I'm Roadrunner. There's no in between. And I think that's kind of where I was at that point. I was in the clouds about it. There was just this weird uncertainty. And it had nothing to do with marriage or anything like that at the time. That was the furthest thing from my mind during that time period. Although seeing girls in a school atmosphere for the first time in 4.5 years after I left CBA definitely helped when I went to Siena. But that's not here nor there. There was a mental block that to this day I can't put my finger on. Yeah, I can't. Like, there's only one thing that comes to mind, but I can remember the days that news would come out about this stuff, and I'd be kind of numb to it. I was just like, just because I never experienced it, and that's the child abuse scandal. That's the only thing that I can come up with, but it doesn't make sense to me because anytime I saw news about it or heard news about it, my reaction was kind of blasé and whatever. So I don't even think I could use that as a valid excuse at this point. But for whatever reason, it didn't happen. And that's probably the biggest what if about my life. Because obviously, if you're a priest, you can't be married. And if you can't be married, you can't have kids. And if I wasn't married, I wouldn't be living in Amsterdam. I'd be living in a rectory somewhere in the capital region. And I'd be saying mass and saying prayers and doing confessionals and all that stuff. So, yeah. Talk about a night and day lifestyle compared to what I do now. Just saying. So that being said, this episode went longer than I expected, but I'm proud of it, personally. I think it covered a lot of bases, especially stuff I hadn't really discussed in a public sector before, I guess would be the best way to put it. Yeah, I'm cool. I don't think there's anything else really. Yes, Mass at 9 and Breakfast at the Gateway with Aunt Lena. Yes, Mom. Yes, that's correct. That would be it right there. So yeah. So just a reminder, today's episode, sponsored by the Healing Meals Inc. check them out, thehealingmeals.com. They're on Everett Road in Albany. Say hi to Chris for me when you see him. And don't forget, scrolling on the bottom, Twitter, if you want to check me out. Not all my tweets are going to be about mental health. They're about all kinds of different stuff. You can follow me at Brian Katie. It's my name, all is one word. Or you can send your comments about the show, your questions about stuff I talk about, questions about mental health in general, your mental health story if you want. By all means, email me, brian.katie@godzillamedia.com. So, that being said, Nick, there's no formal plan right now. I have no idea. Could be trying to get a guest on the show, might not. Who knows? Like I said to like I said to many of people back when I was in radio, my favorite thing to say was, if you don't have a plan A, you better have a plan B. Well, if your plan A dies, you better have a plan B that can live. I think that was the quote I used to use back in the day. I don't know. I was full of stupid shit in the day. But anyways, that's it for the Space Between Your Ears, episode 2. Check back next week. New episode on everywhere you can get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, and Breaker. For now, Brian Katie signing off. Toodles.